Reverend Dr. Raymont Anderson is an ordained Centers for Spiritual Living minister serving the Center for Spiritual Living Greater Baltimore community as our spiritual director. As a lifelong learner with a passion for self development, personal transformation, transmutation, and transfiguration, he has frequently been referred to as a Renaissance man and visionary New Thought leader who makes complex metaphysical concepts readily understandable and applicable. His mission is to live, move, and be an active member of society who serves to educate, elucidate, and emancipate people and communities to awaken and empower themselves. ACTIVE is an acronym that stands for authentic, compassionate, transparent, inspired, vibrant, and empowered. And he continues to live his bliss as a teacher, minister, author, workshop and seminar facilitator, visual artist, ASL interpreter, and ASL performing artist, mentor, father, grandfather, and more. I give you Reverend Dr. Ray.
Namaste and greetings, everyone. Prayerfully, everyone is well today. So here we are, week number 2 in this consciousness of living everyday wonder in, as, around nature. Specifically today, as you've already heard, we're talking about water, good old H2O, and all of the ways that it shows up. And I'd like to invite you, if you haven't seen the video that came out in the newsletter or was shared on social media about what if God were water or water was God, check it out. It's very interesting. So this concept of water is life is a very multi-layered concept. It's a very multi-layered consciousness. We talk about the water and all of the ways that it shows up on Earth, and all of the things that we do with water, all of the things that we do in water. So many, many, many ways that water affects our lives. And yet very few of us really take the time to appreciate it and to recognize it for what it actually is. So let's dive on in. You see the earth and you see how much of it is covered in water. And then there's clearly all of the water that, when Frank was doing the meditation, he mentioned water in solid form, ice, snow. So we look at this and we see all of the blue and water, 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 water. But we don't see the individual lakes and the rivers, and we don't see the polar ice caps. And, we may see some of it, but there are other aspects that we don't see. Like there's water, and we don't see the depths of, and water, so much. And yet, once again, do we appreciate it? Now, you go to the beach. Yeah, you might appreciate it when you go to the beach. You flush the toilet and you might appreciate it when it flushes, because when it doesn't, you're like, oh man. So there are certain times that, yes, we appreciate it. But if we really appreciated it, then one of the ways that we would do so is through this act of self-care, that we would make sure that our body temple stays hydrated. And many of us don't do that. Why not? I mean, staying hydrated does a great many things, removes toxins from your system. It keeps your joints flexible and greased, cleans your skin, boosts your brain function, and more and more. And yet we do not drink enough water to stay hydrated. Why not? If water is God, and through the act of imbibing water, we are nourishing this body temple, which is God, then why would we deny ourselves the opportunity to engage in that spiritual practice? Water, water everywhere, nor not a drop to drink. See, when we don't have water to drink, and we, for a variety of reasons, there drought, the well has run dry, etc., etc. The water is contaminated, etc., etc. Then we suffer, and we recognize the suffering. There's no water. My body aches, and then we complain. And yet, when it's there, and there isn't an apparent issue with it, then our privilege kicks in and we take it for granted. Is that the consciousness that we want to be steeped in? Think about that. According to Oasis Hospice's website, how long can a normal person survive without water? Depends on the person and a couple other factors, but on an average, 3 days. How long can the average person survive now without food or water? Depends, but 8 to 21 days-ish. Water is far more important to the human body than food. Did you hear what I said? Water, we can go 3 days. Food, it stretches. We can go a little bit longer without food, but not without water. And yet, once again, we purposefully dehydrate ourselves because we refuse to engage in imbibing the life force of God as water. And how many of us, because if we're talking about spiritual activism and spiritual responsibility and accountability, then our spiritual imperative isn't just about drinking our water, bathing in our water, and showering in our water. It's also being accountable for the global water crisis. And according to the United Nations, every year there are more deaths caused by polluted water than any type of violence combined, including war. Pause, breathe. Polluted water is killing more people than all sorts and forms of violence, including war, on planet Earth right now. Breathe and take this in. Polluted water. Water that people are drinking, bathing in. Water that children are drinking, brushing their teeth with. What is your spiritual imperative calling you to do with such things as Flint, Michigan? In 2014, this was the condition of their water for approximately 2,112 days. What did we as a spiritual community of New Thought, what did we have to say about this? What did we do about this? Who did we contact about this? And even now, how many of us are spiritually responsible to know what's going on there now? See, when the well has run dry for us, then we're up in arms. When the wells run dry, according to Benjamin Franklin, we know the worth of water. When my water is polluted or my pipes are clogged up, then I know the worth of water. but it's your water, your house, your consciousness. Do your work. Is that the consciousness that we are anchored in? If you want clean water, then you should do something. That's not mine to do. Like Cain and Abel, am I my brother's keeper? Am I the one responsible for making sure that my brother has clean water? Yes. And make sure that your sister has clean water. Yes. And make sure that your gender non-conforming sibling, your gender fluid sibling, your gender rich sibling has clean water. Yes, it is your responsibility because you are the divine. And your word matters. Your consciousness matters. Your creative process matters. There's not a spot where God is not. So if you are anchored in, if I am anchored in a consciousness of apathy and I don't care, or that's not my problem, then I am adding to the global consciousness of mental pollution that is showing up as water pollution and air pollution, etc., etc. So if we are truly going to be excellent stewards of this thing called earth, excellent stewards of our body temple, excellent stewards of life, then we are called to recognize water is life and stand up with our indigenous siblings and recognize that we are called spiritually. Like the Good Samaritan, we are called to be spiritually active, to treat and move our feet. Now, each one of us has to figure out what that movement is, and yet we are called to protect. We are called to stand in solidarity. We are called to pray of one accord. We are called into this greater, more expansive recognition that we are not alone. So are you a water protector? Are you standing in solidarity with those who are? Are you recognizing beyond just prayer, beyond just meditation, beyond just chanting? Are you actively engaged in changing the old paradigm, the old consciousness of colonization, of lack, scarcity, and separation, of it's just about me, selfishness, and egoic nonsense, to a world that works for all? Are you doing that work of building, dissolving this, decolonizing this, and building this new consciousness of a world that truly works for all? W.H. Auden says, thousands, which I would say millions, have lived without love, but not one without water. There are a lot of us who can trace our lives and recognize times where we were not loved. Many of us don't love ourselves, so we may be included in this. Many have lived without love, but none without water. Water is life. Now, this world that works for all solves both of these because it brings love into the mix and it ensures clean and effective water is in the mix. Breathe and allow yourself to anchor and ground and come back and say, are you really? Are you ready for water equity and justice? Really? Are you ready to recognize water and life is a human right? Are you? Really? Are you standing in solidarity and recognizing that there is work to do and doing the work? Really? Because it's easy to talk. It's easy to give lip service. You know, it's easy to do that. But to actually stand up and speak out, to let your voice, your prayers, not just be heard, but to be seen in the manner in which you live. What did Tracy say? Not only do we live in answered prayer, we live as answered prayer. That means when we show up on the scene, the very fact that we are there and how we are there is answered prayer, is the catalyst for answered prayer, is the movement of the vision in that space. Are you? No, really. Are you? Are you willing to step into that at a greater degree? Emerson says, everything in nature contains all the powers of nature. Everything is made of one hidden stuff. Everything within the one mind contains all the powers of the one mind. For that which is the one mind, this hidden stuff of creation moves in, through, and around everything and everyone. There's not a spot where God is not. Do we honor that? Do we acknowledge that? Do we recognize that and appreciate it and celebrate it? Hermann Hesse says, they both listened silently to the water, which to them was not just water, but the voice of life, the voice of being, the voice of perpetual, eternal becoming. See, to the one, what did we talk about last week? About the one who is skilled in the communication of nature, well versed in the sacred scripture of nature. To that person who knows the language, all things communicate. The rocks speak. The trees, the breeze speak. All of earth. If God is all there is, then why wouldn't the grass have the voice of God? Why wouldn't the hummingbird have the voice of God? Why wouldn't water have the voice of God? Are you listening? Do you hear the voice of life in water? Do you hear the voice of being in water? Do you hear the voice of perpetual becoming with each sip and each time you bathe and each moment that it rains? Mother Earth is not a resource. Mother Earth is an heirloom. David Ipina from the Yurok tribe. Mother Earth is not a resource. It is not something to be pillaged and raped. Mother Earth is an heirloom to be handed down through generations that our great, 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 great grandchildren still have blue skies and clean water and green grass to touch their bare feet. An heirloom. We inherited it. Are we tending to it in order to hand it down in the same shape that it was handed to us, or in better shape? Winona LaDuke says, water is life. We are the people who live by the water, pray by these waters, travel by the waters, eat and drink from these waters. We are related to those who live in the waters. To poison the waters is to show disrespect, which I add and say, to poison the waters is to be blasphemy for creation. To dishonor and protect, to honor and to protect the water is our responsibility as the people of the land. It is our responsibility. And for those who recognize God is all there is, then do we not have an even greater spiritual responsibility to honor and protect, a greater spiritual accountability to honor and respect land, sea, and air, and all that exists within? Breathe. John Muir says, when we contemplate the whole globe as one great dewdrop, striped and dotted with continents and islands, flying through space with other stars, all singing and shining together as one, the whole universe appears as an infinite storm of beauty. Are we willing to participate in this great, glorious, and grand form of divine creation? And not simply be those who recognize it as a resource to be used up, balled up, and thrown away. Not my problem. That's their problem. Breathe. Lucy Larcombe says, a drop of water, if it could write its own history, would explain the universe to us. Well, wait a minute. But what if it's not if it could write? A drop of water in writing its own history right now explains the universe to us in every drop. Are we reading? Are we listening? Are we appreciating? Bruce Lee advises us to be like water, to flow, to be open at the top, to become that which is the shape of the divine, to mold and conform to the infinite oneness of creation, love, flow, peace, flow, love and harmony, beauty and joy, flow, gratitude, flow, be like water. Whereas we are told in many Buddhist traditions, the mind is like water, and when it is turbulent and thrashing about, it is difficult to see through it. Yet when it is calm, everything becomes clear. Be like water. All water is holy water. Rajiv Joseph reminds us all water is holy water, not just the water that some priest or nun or someone has blessed. All water is holy water. Do you brush your teeth? Do you use water? It's holy water. Do you use the bathroom, the toilet? Do you flush? All water is holy water. Do you bathe? Do you shower? Do you wash your face? All water is holy water. Do you make coffee or tea? All water is holy water. All water is holy water. Do you respect it as such? Ernest Holmes tells us, it seems as though everything in life is meant to circulate. And the moment we stop the circulation, that very act stagnates what would have moved freely. Stagnant water was once flowing water that became sidetracked from its own flow. And that which was perfect, clean, and pure became impure. It is just the same with our mind. Remember that turbulent water, that thrashing about? It is the same with our mind and our emotions. Be like water. Do we conform to the container of hate? Do we conform to the container of separate, isolated, lack and scarcity? Be like water. It is just the same as with our mind and our emotions. There is a pressure against us for self-expression, and when it is expressed, our life flows happily, joyfully, naturally. But when we tend to hinder it or allow it to be hindered, there is stagnation. The creative impulse must create something. or we are unhappy. Now pause and recognize that because the creative impulse must create something, that creation can be racism. For racism was created, sexism was created. The creative impulse must create something. Right now, we are invited to make sure that that something that is created is joy, connectivity, peace, unity, love, reverence for this holy water, reverence for each individualized expression of the one. Today, let us anchor and ground, recognizing that the creative impulse is living, moving, and active in our minds and our emotions and our words and the manner in which we move our feet, the manner in which we act. Breathe. This week's practice: 1, research and educate yourself about the current water crisis wherever around the world there is a crisis, and ask, what can I do to be a defender of water? 2, watch the video, as I mentioned before, that was shared in the newsletter and shared here on Facebook, and watch the video. And then journal about what you thought and felt after listening. And if you need the link, feel free to email Tracy or I. What if water was God? It's on TikTok. Journal about it. What did you feel? What did you think as you listened to him say these words? And then lastly, have a conversation with 2 people about some of the spiritual symbolism of water. Also, read and discuss the video, or this article, 30 Days of Love, Hate, and Indifference, the Rice and Water Experiment. There were jars of water and rice where this mother and daughter sent the energy of love to one jar, and they observed what happened. Hate and indifference to the other jars, and they noticed 3 jars, same rice, same water, and in 30 days, 3 different manifestations showed up. Read it and discuss it with whoever it is your other 2 people are. And then the works of Masaru Emoto. Watch this video. It's an interview with him. What is the impact of this idea of water? And watch the other video where he talks about water and consciousness and how consciousness affects the water. And remember that we are a great majority of water, and we drink water and we use water. We live around water. We could not live without it. And yet consciousness affects water. Breathe. This week's affirmation, our declaration, I will say it first. And if you feel in alignment with it, then say it with me the second time. I am grateful for the waters of life that sustain me. Together. I am grateful for the waters of life that sustain me. Breathe. Breathe and allow that gratitude to overflow. Now, we recognize that while this thing called our Sunday celebration, our Sunday service, our Sunday gathering is coming to a close, the way in which we serve humanity continues. The way in which we walk the walk continues. The way in which we talk the talk continues. Long after this moment of time has yielded and become that next great, grand, and glorious now moment. So the ways in which God forever, as you, acts upon itself, serves itself, loves itself out in the world, that continues forever. So we breathe in gratitude, recognizing that it is a great, a glorious, a beautiful moment, and what an amazing time to be alive. For we are called for such a time as this. It is good because it's God. The law says yes, which means it's answered prayer. And so it is. Namaste, blessings and love.